Hello everyone, David here. Got a pretty quick video for you today. I think I've managed to put together the smallest, lightest, but really good full-frame vlogging setup, and I'm filming on it right now, so let me swap out for my phone and I'll show you what it looks like. So this is the full setup. I'm using the Sony A7c compact full-frame camera, a Samyang 18mm f2.8 lens, Sennheiser MKE 200 external microphone, and an Ulanzi mini tripod. And this is pretty cool because the legs collapse in, so you can use it just as a grip while you're walking and talking, and it also extends vertically, so if you put it down on a table you can get a really nice vantage point, especially with the adjustable ball head down there. Okay, let's put the whole thing on the scales and we'll see how much it weighs. I'll just center that, and then make sure we include all of the strap as well, so it's a nice fair test. Okay, and the whole thing weighs a pretty reasonable 851 grams. So this is the kind of...
Happy 2021
Okay, I couldn't have scripted that. So this is an example of the kind of video and audio quality you can get from this setup with a full frame camera and at f2.8. It works pretty well in like London's fairly typical dimly lit conditions. Otherwise I tend to shoot in aperture priority and flagrantly disregard the 180-degree shutter rule. Even in bright sunlight I just let it use very fast shutter speed because actually it's slightly better if you want to stabilize it later with a fast shutter. And speaking of stabilisation, that's one of the things this setup doesn't really have. There's steady shot built into the A7c, which is better than nothing, but it's not great for this kind of walking and talking. You can probably notice I'm shaking around a fair bit, but I can stabilise that in Catalyst Browse, which then works really well. The only downside is that it takes quite a while to re-encode the video, and you do lose a little bit of quality because you're doing another step of processing, decoding and re-encoding the video that you've just recorded. So let's talk a bit more about stabilisation with David back in the studio, and we can compare it to some other forms of stabilising this kind of slightly shaky footage. How's it going, fellow kids? Let's talk stabilisation. So here's a clip from earlier today. It's me in St James's Park. There's quite a lot of kind of hopping and jumping around. Just when I take every step with the camera, you can kind of see it almost bounce. It needs stabilisation for sure. Now, I've already run this clip through Catalyst Browse, and it looks way better. This is not with the auto setting, it's with manual, with the cropping reduced to only 90%, because it's a bit too enthusiastic with its cropping usually, but it really helps a lot. It just kind of like irons out all of those little pops and jitters around. However, it's a 1 minute and 6 second clip, and it took 21 minutes to encode it, so it's a really expensive way of stabilizing your footage after you've taken it. And if you're a YouTuber like me, you kind of just want to throw your video together as quickly as possible, so you can change things if you need to. And also it's nice to be able to make videos quickly. So Catalyst Browse is kind of not great for that, but you can't argue with the results. So if you've got time, it's worth running them through this. The downside is that you have to re-encode all of your videos as well, and you potentially lose a bit of quality that way. You can queue up multiple videos. I think that might be something they patched in a more recent version, so you don't have to sit there and wait for each one, but it does mean if you've got an hour of footage and it's going to take some 20 times that to process it all, you're going to have to come back the day after to get all of your clips, which is kind of impractical. So what I tend to do is I tend to use Davinci Resolve for any clip where I'm stood still, because it works quite well for those. It doesn't work so well with the walking and talking clips. So this has been run through the standard stabilisation with Davinci Resolve, and you just get this like really horrible kind of warping effect. I think as it's trying to track both the background and my face, and there's some conflict there. So I can't use the built-in like standard stabilisation for anything where I'm on the move. But there is another way with Davinci Resolve, and that's to use the classic stabiliser, and I find that works a little better with this kind of walking and talking type clips. So to do that, make sure you have your clip selected and then go to the Colour tab, and then go along to this icon here, which is the tracker, and make sure you select the second dot along, which is the stabilizer. From this drop down, select Classic Stabilizer, and then move your playhead back to the start or wherever you want to start stabilizing from, and press the play button. And this will pick lots of points of interest in the video and actually track its movement along the course of the clip. Now this does take a little while, so just kind of have to sit back and wait for it, but it's at least quicker than Catalyst Browse. Okay, that probably took about 3 minutes. It's now finished tracking, and it's as easy as hitting stabilize. And now we get footage that's actually looks completely crazy until we go and play with these strong and smooth settings. So 50 and 50 is like a reasonable starting point, and now we've got footage that doesn't warp like it does with the standard stabilizer and was done way quicker than Catalyst Browse. So here's an alternative. Let me show you all four on screen and you can take your pick. I'm in aperture priority mode right now, 1/320 of a second, so completely disregarding the 180-degree shutter rule, but I don't know, do you care? I guess you could bring some ND filters with you if you wanted to still kind of adhere to that. So the Samyang lens is not a perfect lens by any stretch of the imagination. It's got a fairly long minimum focusing distance of 25 centimeters, but let's not confuse that with the working distance, which is the distance from the end of the lens to whatever you want to focus on, which is more about 19 centimeters because the lens is about 6. But I've got it about 30 centimeters away from my face to the end of the lens right now, and this is about what I would consider comfortable for vlogging. Reaching the minimum focus distance is somewhere around here, and at this point my face is just completely dominating the frame, but it's still keeping focus on me pretty closely, pretty well. It's only when I come up to sort of around here that it starts really struggling, and like, why would you want to vlog at this kind of distance? Something like this is way more comfortable. Some other drawbacks of this lens are that it's not weather sealed, so don't take it out in heavy rain or to like some colour powder festival, something like that. And it is kind of cheap and plasticky feeling, but I do want to keep it light, so it works really well for me. Other alternatives are the Tamron 20mm f2.8. It's about the same price, a little bit heavier, but it's got a much closer focus distance, so if you need a macro lens, that'll work out better for you, but it does have a slightly narrower field of view. Also the Sony 20mm f1.8 with its like very large aperture, it lets in loads more light and it's a beautiful lens, but quite a bit heavier and way more expensive. And then you've got loads of 24mm lenses, but they start getting quite difficult for vlogging. So for me, the Samyang is kind of the perfect lens for this setup. Okay, so let's talk about the audio. One thing that's great about the Sennheiser MKE 200 is that it's a very short microphone and fits nicely on top of the camera without sticking out too much on either end. But I do worry that it's not as directional as the Rode Videomicro. So I'm here on quite a busy, sort of noisy road with quite a lot of noise going on behind me. So what do you think? Is it better with the Sennheiser MKE 200 attached, or do you prefer it with the Rode Videomicro attached? Now this is a much bigger microphone, it sticks out much more on top of the camera, and the windshield is huge, so less practical, but this has been a kind of YouTuber's classic favourite external microphone for a long time, so I wonder how it compares. Let's also try the internal audio for the camera, which I'm not expecting very much from, but you never know, it might surprise me. And as a final test, let's also go to the Rode Wireless Go, which is actually the smallest of the lot on top of the camera, but it does mean you have to wear this extra lapel mic and make sure both parts of the unit are charged when you want to use it. You know, it's another thing to forget to charge and another thing to forget to turn on. The thing I like about having a microphone mounted on top of the camera is that it's always there, ready to go, and the MKE 200 and the Rode Videomicro don't require batteries or any kind of power source. Well, they're powered from the camera, so they're just ready to go at all times. Let's switch back to the MKE 200. What do you think? Is it clearly better or worse than the others? Is there a clear winner for you? For me, this is my favourite, purely for the form factor and convenience. And the plug is on the front. Okay, so the front is this side of the camera. And there's no cable sticking out the back. So it does mean that if you were to attach it to your camera, you can get it into a much smaller space, because if you have a short lens, you're not going to be limited by a microphone sticking out at the front. And also, it's going to be more flush at the back because you won't have this cable sticking out. So kind of more convenient, not really for the weight because there's not much in it, but just in terms of the size and where they decided to put this microphone jack, which was very clever. And it means that the whole thing can fit easily into a medium-sized satchel without any assembly or disassembly required. It's just ready to go. The only thing about this setup is I might sort of turn around the flippy screen so that I can look at myself while I'm filming. Apart from that, just turn it on, hit the record button, and we're good. So is this the perfect setup? Well, no, definitely not. I mean, I wish the A7c had active stabilisation built into it, like the A7S3 does, because it would just save me that bit of time in post, either stabilising with Davinci Resolve or putting it through Catalyst Browse, which does take a long time. I wish the lens was weather sealed, so I know I could take it out in rain or to some kind of dusty conditions, you know, and I wouldn't have to worry about it. And I do wish the whole setup was even lighter. I mean, I think I've got it down to about as light as it's going to get using 2020 technology. But I do wish it weighed like just next to nothing, like my little Sony action camera, which produces wonderfully stabilised footage, by the way, but is like fixed focus and doesn't work very well in the dark. So for now, this feels like about as good as we're going to get on any kind of vaguely reasonable budget. And it's very convenient for me, so this is what I'm going to be using for my vlogs from now on. So there you go, that's my new vlogging setup. I think it's really neat, and I hope it's useful to you if you decide to make something similar. If you've been watching my channel, you might be wondering what happened to my ZV-1, because I had that camera and kitted it out with a wide-angle lens adapter, an external microphone, and I was going to use that. And I did use it for a while, until I ran into two problems. One is that it would discharge the battery even while it was trickle charging from my computer. So set up like this, right next to, right on top of my desk, it could actually exhaust the battery, which was a bit annoying. Now I could swap out the battery and kind of get around that, but another problem the camera had was that it did overheat after a while. So if I was recording like this to camera for 45 minutes or an hour in 4K, it would overheat and shut down, and I'd just have to wait for it to cool down. And that was really annoying to me because I could be sitting down ready to make the next part of my video and I was just unable to because I was having to wait for my equipment. So I considered this a much better solution. And of course this is full frame and I've got the freedom to change to a different lens so I can have a different type of shot if I want as well. So if you make a setup like this, then I'd love to hear about it. So leave me a comment down there and I'll have a read of it. Okay, I hope you found this video useful. If so, then leave me a like down below and you can help me out by subscribing to my channel as well. Okay, see you next time.